Marvel has announced dozens of movies over the years, but not all of them made it to the screen. Today we're looking at 12 cancelled Marvel films that could have changed everything. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers before Avengers Doomsday comes out. To support the channel and get notified the moment new videos drop, subscribe and don't forget to turn on notifications. Enjoy the video. Spider-Man 4. After the mixed reception of Spider-Man 3, Sam Raimi was determined to deliver a fourth film that would return to the darker, more grounded tone of Spider-Man 2. Tobey Maguire was set to return as Peter Parker, and the story was going to center on the Vulture as the primary villain, with John Malkovich reportedly in talks to play Adrian Toomes. Anne Hathaway was also attached to a role, though not as Black Cat as many assumed. She was reportedly set to play a new character called the Vulturess. Raimi wanted to strip away the overcrowded villain problem that plagued the third film and focus on a single, compelling antagonist. However, the project fell apart because Raimi could not crack the script to his own satisfaction within Sony's release timeline. The studio had locked in a May 2011 date and refused to budge, and Raimi felt that rushing the film would result in another disappointing entry. He walked away, and Maguire followed. Sony then rebooted the franchise entirely with Andrew Garfield. What makes this cancellation sting the most is that Raimi reportedly had storyboards and concept art completed for several major sequences, meaning the film was further along than most people realize. It remains one of the most requested unmade superhero films ever. The Incredible Hulk 2. Edward Norton delivered a well-received performance as Bruce Banner in 2008's The Incredible Hulk, and early plans existed to continue his story in a direct sequel. The film would have explored Banner's attempts to control the Hulk while new military threats emerged, potentially introducing the leader as the main villain, a thread clearly set up by Samuel Stearns' transformation scene at the end of the first movie. Norton was deeply involved creatively in the first film, contributing significantly to the script rewrite, which is precisely where the problems began. Marvel Studios and Norton clashed over creative control. Norton wanted a darker, more character-driven film, while Marvel was building a shared universe that required a more collaborative and tonally consistent approach. Kevin Feige ultimately decided not to bring Norton back, recasting the role with Mark Ruffalo for the Avengers. Norton later said he felt the studio wanted actors who would not challenge the process. The leader setup was left dangling for over a decade until Tim Blake Nelson finally returned in Captain America: Brave New World. Reportedly, one early sequel concept involved Banner being hunted across South America, which would have given the film a thriller tone closer to the television series than a typical superhero blockbuster. Sinister 6. Sony had massive plans to expand their Spider-Man universe, and the crown jewel was a Sinister 6 film that Drew Goddard was attached to write and direct. The movie would have assembled 6 of Spider-Man's greatest villains, and Goddard's vision was reportedly ambitious. According to leaked Sony emails from the 2014 hack, one version of the story involved the Sinister 6 traveling to the Savage Land, the hidden prehistoric region in Antarctica from Marvel Comics. The team would have been positioned almost as anti-heroes forced into a dangerous mission. Goddard apparently had a completed script that Sony executives were genuinely excited about, and the project was being fast-tracked following The Amazing Spider-Man 2. However, when that sequel underperformed both critically and commercially, Sony panicked. The entire Amazing Spider-Man franchise slate collapsed, and the studio pivoted toward a deal with Marvel Studios to bring Spider-Man into the MCU with Tom Holland. Goddard's Sinister 6 was quietly shelved. According to the leaked emails, Sony producer Amy Pascal considered the Sinister 6 script one of the strongest they had in development. X-Men Origins. Magneto. Before the X-Men franchise was rebooted with First Class, Fox was developing a solo origin film for Magneto. The project would have followed Eric Lensherr from his childhood in Nazi concentration camps through his evolution into one of Marvel's most complex villains. David Goyer, who co-wrote Batman Begins, wrote a script and was set to direct. The story reportedly focused heavily on Eric's hunt for Nazi war criminals in the decades after World War II, playing almost like a revenge thriller with superhero elements woven in. Ian McKellen was not expected to star since the film covered Eric's younger years, and no actor was officially cast in the lead before the project stalled. The cancellation came down to Fox's shifting priorities after X-Men Origins. Wolverine received harsh criticism in 2009. The studio lost confidence in the Origins brand entirely and decided to take the franchise in a different direction. Matthew Vaughn eventually incorporated many of Magneto's origin elements into X-Men First Class, with Michael Fassbender delivering the Nazi hunting sequences that Goyer had originally envisioned. Reportedly, Goyer's original script was darker and more grounded than anything the X-Men franchise had attempted, treating Eric's powers almost as a secondary element to his psychological trauma and moral descent. James Cameron's Spider-Man. Long before Sam Raimi brought Spider-Man to the screen, James Cameron developed his own version throughout the early 1990s. Cameron wrote a detailed scriptment, a combination of script and treatment that reimagined Peter Parker as a more adult character. The story included organic web shooters instead of mechanical ones, a detail Raimi later adopted, and featured a grittier New York City setting with Electro and Sandman as villains. Cameron envisioned Leonardo DiCaprio or Edward Furlong for Peter Parker, and Arnold Schwarzenegger was reportedly discussed for Dr. Octopus at various points during development. The project never made it to production primarily because of a massive legal battle over the Spider-Man film rights. Carolco Pictures, Canon Films, and several other entities all claimed ownership, creating a rights dispute so tangled that no studio could greenlight the film. By the time the legal mess was resolved, Cameron had moved on to Titanic and eventually lost interest. The scriptment leaked online years later, and fans noted that Cameron included a surprisingly explicit love scene between Peter Peter and Mary Jane on top of the Brooklyn Bridge, something that would have made it a very different kind of superhero movie. Many of Cameron's core ideas quietly influenced the Raimi trilogy that eventually got made. Dr. Doom, Noah Hawley, the creator of the acclaimed Fargo and Legion television series, was developing a Dr. Doom solo film for 20th Century Fox. The project would have centered entirely on Victor Von Doom, presenting him as a complex sovereign ruler rather than a straightforward villain. Hawley envisioned a politically driven story exploring Doom's leadership of Latveria and his philosophical worldview, reportedly drawing more from the tone of a European art film than a conventional superhero blockbuster. No actor was officially confirmed for the role, though Hawley had a completed script that Fox executives were reportedly very high on. The project was moving forward through development when Disney's acquisition of 21st Century Fox effectively killed it. Once the deal closed in 2019, all Fox Marvel properties reverted to Marvel Studios, and Kevin Feige's team chose to develop their own plans for the character. Hawley later confirmed that the film was dead and expressed disappointment. The irony is that Marvel Studios eventually made Dr. Doom central to their own plans by casting Robert Downey Jr. in the role for Avengers Doomsday, a creative decision that went in a wildly different direction than the intimate character study Hawley had been crafting. Daredevil 2. After the 2003 Daredevil film starring Ben Affleck, Fox had early plans to develop a sequel that would have continued Matt Murdock's story. The first film received mixed reviews but performed reasonably well at the box office, and Affleck was initially open to returning. The sequel was expected to draw from Frank Miller's iconic comic book runs, with some reports suggesting that the story could adapt elements of the Born Again storyline, one of the most celebrated Daredevil arcs ever published. Mark Steven Johnson, who directed the original, was involved in early discussions, though no director was formally confirmed for the sequel. The critical reception of the first film left Fox uncertain about the franchise's long-term viability, and the spin-off Elektra, released in 2005 starring Jennifer Garner, was a commercial and critical disaster that further damaged the brand. Affleck himself grew increasingly vocal about his dissatisfaction with the original film and publicly stated he would not return to the role. Fox eventually let the rights lapse, and they reverted to Marvel, which led to the critically acclaimed Netflix series starring Charlie Cox. Reportedly, one early sequel concept involved introducing Mr. Fear as the villain, which would have taken the franchise into psychological horror territory that was quite unusual for superhero films of that era. The Amazing Spider-Man 3. Sony had mapped out an ambitious future for Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man that extended well beyond 2 films. The Amazing Spider-Man 3 was officially announced with a release date of 2018, and the storyline was expected to deal with the aftermath of Gwen Stacy's death and Peter Parker's emotional spiral. There were strong indications that the film would introduce the Sinister Six in some capacity, while also potentially exploring the return of Peter's parents as a deeper conspiracy thread. Garfield was committed to the role and had spoken publicly about wanting to explore a darker, more emotionally raw version of Peter Parker dealing with survivor's guilt. Director Mark Webb was expected to return. The cancellation was a direct consequence of The Amazing Spider-Man 2 underperforming against Sony's financial expectations. The film earned around $708 million worldwide, which sounds impressive but fell below projections, and critics were harsh about its overstuffed plot. Sony's internal confidence collapsed, and the leaked emails revealed executives questioning the entire direction of the franchise. The studio ultimately struck a deal with Marvel Studios to reboot Spider-Man with Tom Holland. Garfield reportedly learned the franchise was over, not through a formal conversation but through the news cycle, which he later described as a painful and confusing experience during interviews. Silver Surfer. James Gunn, years before he became the architect of Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy franchise and eventually the head of DC Studios, wrote a script for a Silver Surfer solo film. The project was developed at Fox, which held the rights to the character through its Fantastic Four deal. Gunn's script reportedly explored Norrin Radd's origin story, his sacrifice to save his home planet Zenla by becoming Galactus's herald, and his eventual rebellion against the World Devourer. The tone was described as epic and emotional, leaning into the cosmic tragedy of a man who surrenders everything he loves to serve a being who consumes civilizations. No director or lead actor was ever officially attached beyond Gunn's involvement as screenwriter. The project stalled because Fox struggled to figure out how to make a cosmic Silver Surfer film work on a practical level. The character had already appeared in Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer in 2007, voiced by Lawrence Fishburne and performed by Doug Jones, but that film underperformed and soured the studio on cosmic Marvel properties. Fox shelved the solo project indefinitely, and Gunn moved on to other work before Marvel Studios hired him for Guardians. Gambit. The project was first announced in 2014, with Tatum attached to play Remy LeBeau, and it spent roughly 6 years cycling through directors, writers, and release dates without ever reaching production. At various points, Rupert Wyatt, Doug Liman, and Gore Verbinski were all attached to direct before departing. The story reportedly evolved significantly with each iteration, but the core concept involved a heist thriller tone set in New Orleans that leaned into Gambit's Cajun charm and thieving background rather than traditional superhero action. Tatum was passionate about the role and remained attached even as the project repeatedly fell apart around him. The cancellation ultimately came down to a combination of creative instability and the Disney-Fox merger. No version of the script ever satisfied both the studio and the rotating creative teams, and once Disney acquired Fox, the project was officially dead since Marvel Studios had no interest in continuing Fox's X-Men slate. Inhumans. Marvel Studios originally announced Inhumans as a major theatrical release in 2014, slating it for a November 2000 2018 premiere as part of their Phase 3 lineup. The film was intended to introduce Black Bolt, Medusa, and the Inhuman royal family to the MCU on a grand cinematic scale. At the time, Marvel was heavily pushing the Inhumans across comics and television, partly because they did not have access to the X-Men, and the Inhumans served as a substitute for exploring stories about people born with extraordinary abilities. Vin Diesel was repeatedly rumored for Black Bolt, fueling speculation for years, though nothing was ever confirmed. The project had no official director or cast when it was quietly removed from Marvel's release calendar. The cancellation happened because Marvel Studios shifted its Phase 3 priorities. Films like Ant-Man and the Wasp, Captain Marvel, and eventually Spider-Man's integration into the MCU took precedence. Kevin Feige reportedly felt the Inhumans concept worked better as a television property, and the project was handed to Marvel Television under Jeff Loeb. The resulting ABC series in 2017, directed by Scott Buck, was critically savaged and lasted only one season. Reportedly, the original theatrical version would have had a significantly larger budget and a completely different creative vision, with early concept art suggesting massive set pieces on the inhuman city of Attilan that the television budget could never replicate. Blade. Marvel Studios announced a new Blade film starring Mahershala Ali at San Diego Comic-Con in 2019, and it was immediately one of the most anticipated projects in the MCU. Ali, a two-time Academy Award winner, had personally approached Kevin Feige about the role, and the studio built the project around his involvement. The film was expected to reintroduce the daywalking vampire hunter into the modern MCU with a darker tone than most Marvel entries. Bassam Tariq was initially hired to direct, and a script by Stacey Osei Kuffour was in development. However, Tariq departed the project during pre-production, citing creative differences. Yan Demang was then brought on to direct, but the film continued to face significant problems. The script went through multiple rewrites, and production delays mounted due to scheduling conflicts, the writers and actors strikes of 2023, and reportedly shifting creative visions about the film's tone and rating. Ali remained attached throughout years of turbulence, but the project was ultimately shelved in late 2024 after Marvel Studios decided to cool down its overloaded production slate. Reportedly, one version of the script featured Blade operating in a vampire underworld hidden within the MCU's version of London, and early concept art depicted a visual style much grittier than anything Marvel Studios had previously released. Whether the project will ever be revived in some form remains genuinely uncertain. Which cancelled film were you personally waiting for the most? If you enjoyed the video, just hit the like button, subscribe to stay updated on my next uploads, and turning on notifications is all you need. See you in the next videos.